Hello, and this is Sarah Margaret Fuller, a monumental research project by Alexia Taylor, which is myself. A bit of introduction to start with. Sarah Margaret Fuller, more commonly known as Margaret Fuller, lived between 1810 and 1850, and I believe that she deserves a public monument. And while there are many aspects of Fuller's life that have earned her the right to a public monument, I will be specifically focusing on the conversations that she led and the impact that they had. And I will also be focusing on the effects of Fuller's influence while she advocated for women's rights. Also, Fuller is considered to be one of the most important, or at least the most notable, American feminists of her time. And sliding into a bit of historical perspective, who was Margaret Fuller? Margaret Fuller was an American editor, journalist, translator, teacher, literary critic, and women's rights activist. And as a result of her father's insistence that his firstborn be given an education fit for a boy at that time, she was incredibly well-read and intelligent. And she grew up to be a prominent advocate for many social reforms, most notably women's rights. What did Fuller do? Or more specifically, what am I focusing on that Fuller did? Fuller led conversations or discussions during 1839, and they ended in 1844. And during these 2-hour conversations, Fuller began by discussing a topic such as literature or art or something along those lines, and then led into talking about women's roles and their purposes. And this is when she would open the floor to the women who attended, the women who were listening to her lectures. What led to Fuller's conversations? Well, Fuller started these conversations because she needed money to provide for her family, and she hoped to provoke a profound level of thinking in others. And while she was a teacher at Green Street School, she was not getting paid enough, and she was not getting paid, she felt she wasn't getting paid enough, and she did not have enough time to dedicate to her writing. And the result of Fuller's conversations are shown through the women who attended. And because these discussions caused the listeners, to ruminate on women's rights and other topics, it is of no surprise that many of the women who attended went on to be important forces in feminism and women's rights and along other reforms. And Margaret Fuller is pictured here. And a little bit more of historical perspective. Fuller's writings. A few first Fuller's writing. The most important, Women in the 19th Century, which is pictured at the top, is considered to be her most important work, and this book is considered to be the first feminist book. And down below that, we have Summers on the Lake. And this book is a narrative of when Fuller traveled from Niagara Falls to Mackinac Island. And on this journey, Fuller had her friends Sarah Ann and James Freeman, and the journey was about the length of a summer. And why was this important? Well, Fuller's writings encouraged other American writers, and she advocated for social reforms in her writing, and they were an inspiration to the women around her. However, not everyone thought that Fuller's conversations were always necessary. Specifically, Harriet Martineau, sorry for the mispronunciation. And while there might not be any current criticisms of Margaret Fuller, Harriet Martineau criticized criticized Fuller's conversations because she thought the women who attended them sat all high and mighty and never took any actions. But Fuller's conversations were to educate the women and to give them a place to speak about topics that they wouldn't normally get the chance to. So taking action wasn't necessarily her point. She also believed that Fuller was too narrow-minded in the fact that she would only stick to discussing feminism and shy away from other topics of reform. But, however, later Fuller changed that. And moving on from criticisms, we have some current examples of dedications to Margaret Fuller. First, we have the Margaret Fuller Neighborhood House. This house, the Margaret Fuller Neighborhood House, as it is called today, was Margaret Fuller's home during her younger years, and today it is a National Historical Monument. And another example is Margaret Fuller's Historic Marker, and this is located in Beacon, New York, in Dutchess County, and I will read what it says down below. Margaret Fuller, first woman reporter for New York Tribune wrote, "Women in the 19th Century," as mentioned earlier, at Van Vliet House, Fishkill Landing, fall 1844. And going on from there is the monument that I propose. This is a image of it. As you can see, Margaret is here, sitting on a bench and has a book in her hand. And the location that I propose for this is in Boston Common Park. Fuller was appreciative of nature, and so that's why I think a park is a great place to put a statue of her. And I propose also, just down the road from this proposed location, less than 5 minutes, about 3, is Brattle Bookshop down below. And significance of that is this was the location of Elizabeth Peabody's bookshop. And there's I'm not sure if you can see it, but the green little sign down right next to the shop actually has a sign that says Elizabeth Peabody Shop, or Peabody Bookshop. And the significance of this is that frequently, Margaret Fuller's conversations were held there. And with the proximity to Peabody's bookshop and being a beautiful park, I think that this location works well for Margaret Fuller's statue. And moving on to speaking to the now. Women's rights is still a very current issue. Yes, it's a very current issue. And there's actually a quote on here. It says, from Margaret Fuller, from her book, Women in the 19th Century. It says, what women need is not as a woman to act or rule, but as a nature to grow, as an intellect to discern, as a soul to live freely and unimpeded. Why is that important? Well, I think it's important because she wanted women to live without having anything really stopping them, but within legal limits, I guess you would say. So I think that having a statue for that would help be a sight for future generations to see that women's rights have always been something that we stand up for, and it's a very important thing, I would say. So yes, that is why I think it would be good or necessary to have a statue of Margaret Fuller. And that is the end of my presentation. But we have my bibliography here. This is the first page of my bibliography in Chicago style format, and the second page. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.